All right, everybody, welcome into Sideline Fantasy. This is going to be week number 7 of the season. Crazy, we are in week 7 already. We're kind of at that we play 13 games, so we're not quite at the midway point, but after this week, we're going to be over the midway point. So it's kind of hard to calculate an exact midway point for the season, but we're pretty much there, Crimmy. And through 6 games of the season, how are we feeling?
Optimistic. This week, not very great.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams, and that's why there's so many fun matchups this week because there's so many 2-4 teams. Half the league is 2-4, and you could argue all of them just need wins. They need wins. They need wins. But again, the playoff team in front of them is only 3-3, so it is still so wide open. I see it staying that way for a while. Trade wise, this week we're at the midway point. I'm waiting for teams to get a little desperate. The last couple weeks, we did see a lot of action. Well, actually, sorry, there was a couple trades this week, so we will go over those. My bad, I was looking at the wrong tab. But looking at the trades that happened this week, obviously last week we had the big 3-team trade, all that hoopla here and there. We did have some moves made this week. Jay traded Joe Mixon to Dave for AJ Green and Hunter Henry, who then Jay traded AJ Green to Kyle for Carlos Hyde. So Jay ends up with Carlos Hyde and Hunter Henry. Kyle ends up with AJ Green. And Peter trades Ronald Jones for Darren Fells. I don't want to break down each individually, but out of these trades, what did you kind of see from all of this? And I'm gonna get your opinion in a second because I'll speak first here. I think the Joe Mixon one obviously does have some upside, but I think that overall, he's just been so tough this year and the team is so bad. And I really did like Mixon coming in the year. I really considered picking him early. Glad I didn't. But trade wise, I don't know, man. That team's just so bad. Like, can he really put together even managing a top 15 running back season? I don't know. But he's
No.
gonna go. He's gonna go to Dave. Dave's going to trade AJ Green and Hunter Henry, who AJ Green in week 7 now has had some type of value for Dave. And Carlos Hyde's now going to go to Jay, who's been pretty consistent. I actually don't mind that move for Jay, but then guess what? He lost Mixon in it, so it's a tough one. And Ronald Jones to Kyle for Darren Fells. Ronald Jones is a tricky one as well. He's had some productive weeks and some not productive weeks. And with Disley going out, he did need a tight end, which he got in return. So looking at all those trades, what did you kind of see with all the moving around? Not huge, big blockbuster trades like last week, but there was some movement.
Yeah. I mean, well, right now, obviously, I'm taking it week by week, so it's hard to kind of jump forward and look at the future for some of these players. But I feel like this week Dave kind of is going to get the shit end of the stick because it's kind of the week where he has the most value in Mixon in regards to a matchup. So if you see him struggle again, because that line is awful. I mean, it's not really a product of Mixon himself; it's a product of that entire offense. Like if he had time, he'd be better, but he just doesn't. So Dave kind of downgraded to me the most because you're giving up Hunter Henry, who gave you 26 points on his return, mind you, against the Steelers, but he's going to have more value, I feel like, going forward if you gave him another game and he showed out once more right
Well,
before
I
the
mean,
deadline.
coming into the year without him even playing last year, most people looked at Hunter Henry as a top 5 tight end.
Yeah. So I mean, I know Dave has Kittle, which is fine, but you could have also moved, which would have made probably maybe more sense to move Kittle, who's I feel like more valuable because of his consistency as opposed
Right.
to Hunter Henry. And you already have Rivers and you have Keenan. So yeah, you're kind of still stacking that passing attack for the Chargers, but if you're already, you've got a foot and a half in the door with that Chargers team, you might as well put the whole second foot in there and just kind of, give her at that point. So
Yeah,
I,
and
it's just
and I was going to say with Mixon, if he does return to form, if he's even top 15, I mean, if you looked at the two pairing of running backs he has right now, Fournette and Mixon, if this was week 1 of the NFL season, you'd look at Dave's team and go, wow, that's not a bad combo there. But with the way Mixon's played, we'll see. I mean, they play each other this week. Jacksonville's bad against the run. Cincinnati's bad against the run. Maybe both of them can put together good weeks. we shall see. And he is deciding to bench Philip Rivers. So surprisingly, as all hell, he only has 2 Chargers in the lineup this week. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Any last thoughts on the trade? I know I cut you off there for a second.
No, yeah. All the trades to me seem somewhat, well, not, I wouldn't say balanced, outside of what Dave got in return. AJ Green, though, I saw this morning that he's not even slated to get back in action until like before the deadline. So he's not playing this week. He's not playing next week. So if he isn't playing until November, at that point, I feel like it's not a lost cause, but you're going to have to get up to speed, game speed, and all that stuff. So, how valuable will he actually be when he starts to play again?
Yeah, I definitely don't think he's a lost cause. I don't know, when he's on the field, and he proved it last year, only 600 receiving or 700 receiving yards last year, but I believe he played in 6 games or 9. And he played in 9 games, but still 77 yards a game, 6 touchdowns. He still does a great job when he's on the field. And the way I kind of look at this trade for Kyle, very low, unless he has an injury, which again we don't like talking the what ifs on injuries. I kind of see this as he's been looking for a star, and he can't find one, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to go with AJ Green. If he comes back around week 10 or 11 and he decides to be the AJ Green of old, he could be a low-end wide receiver 1 or a top wide receiver 2. And I think that's got a lot of upside for Kyle. He could afford that move while other teams needed to get better now. He didn't necessarily have to. And that's what I kind of see from that trade. Yeah. But we'll see. So, with that being said, now we are going to move on to the matchups. Like I said, that was really the only trades this week, and you could argue it was kind of not a 3-team trade, but kind of a lot of mix and matching and all that kind of stuff going on. But we will go to the matchups now, and the first matchup is going to be me versus Kyle. 2 4-2 teams banging heads this week. I think it's the only matchup of 2 above 500. Yeah, it is. Me and Kyle are the only matchup with 2 above 500 teams this week. He is 4-2 in his division. I'm 4-2 in mine. He projected a loss for himself last week. It did not happen. He's projecting a loss for himself this week, so I'm hoping that kind of reverse psychology kind of disappears. But overall, he's projected for 99. I'm projected for a pretty good 117. And he's got Godwin on a bye. Not that he would have started Ronald Jones, but he has Ronald Jones on a bye. Deciding to do the no kicker route until 3 o'clock, I presume, or maybe even 7 or tomorrow night. What's your looking at this matchup?
It's going to come down to like running backs. I mean, your running backs, Le'Veon Bell has a tough, game this week against the Patriots. It's never going to be easy. And then you have Josh Jacobs against the Packers, who were surrendering a hell of a lot of yards to running backs. And then on Kyle's end, he has Kerryon Johnson against Minnesota, which isn't the greatest matchup. Then he also has Barkley back in action, playing Arizona, which is also a very weak defense in general. So the balance there kind of works itself out, I feel. Obviously, don't think that Jacobs will, match the production of Saquon, because Saquon's just a monster. It's so that kind of, in my regard, is a pretty big part of things, but even bigger is the receivers. You see Marvin Jones that Kyle has to kind of play because Godwin's out, and Robert Woods, who's in a really good matchup, and you have Michael Thomas and Julio, who are in not tough matchups, but I'd say that, they're on the top half of the league when it comes to defenses they're playing against. So
yeah,
that's going to kind of be the X factor, I feel like, in this matchup.
Yeah, I don't think by any means he's kind of chalked this up to a loss. I don't think so at all. I think the Carson Wentz against Dallas matchup is going to be really huge because Dallas has been struggling mightily. Can Carson Wentz on my end stay under 20? Kerryon Johnson against Minnesota, he's going to be catching the ball a lot, running the ball here a little bit. Arizona actually has not been horrible against the run, so I'm hoping Saquon, I don't think he's going to be on a snap count, but I wouldn't mind them being a little cautious in his return. I think that Giants-Arizona game could get pretty high scoring. Marvin Jones, like you said, kind of forced to start there. Robert Woods has been okay this year. Only 2 games with double-digit points, and I'm hoping it stays that way. He's only got 2 games over 50 yards receiving this year. I really think it could honestly come down to the tight end flex matchups. I have Tevin Coleman in a very favorable matchup. I'm deciding to ride with him over Breida just because Coleman gets more touches. I kind of been watching the Niners games the last couple weeks and seeing that both of them get touches, but it really seems like Coleman is more of that true running back for them. He's gotten more touches the last 2 weeks, especially in particular his first game back from injury. So that was kind of curious to see. And I also think the tight end matchups: Darren Waller going against Green Bay, Andrews going against Seattle. Could one of these tight ends get 15 or more? I think that could be a big difference as well. He's got the Bears going against New Orleans, and they're missing Kamara. They're missing Jared Cook. That could be big. And I'm going to have the Chargers against a horrible Tennessee offense that's going to start Tannehill this week. So I by no means am looking at this as a sure victory. I like a lot of my matchups, but I'm not sold on them. I will say the Atlanta-LA matchup, I'm hoping is extremely high scoring. I'm deciding to not go Lamar Jackson against Seattle, and I'm going to go Matt Ryan with the hopes that that game is 50-45, because that means I'm hoping Julio got a lot going too, and we'll see. But interesting matchup, like I said, two teams above 500, and not a huge must-win by any means for any team, because we're both still in pretty good position regardless, but it will be curious to see who comes out on top. Next game up is going to be Dave versus Chad. I would argue this is one of the bigger games of the week. Chad lost last week to me. He's 4-2. Both Kyle and Chad are looking to remain on top of their divisions, while Dave, who 2 weeks ago I said was in trouble, has lost 2 weeks in a row. He's 3-3. We talked about a couple of the trades he made. He's going to ride that Daniel Jones train going against Arizona. He's got favorable matchups with Fournette and Mixon. Keenan Allen against a pretty good Tennessee defense, and Allen's been struggling. Ridley could be a part of that super big high-scoring game. Kittle has a favorable matchup. And on the other end, I'm not sure on Deshaun Watson against Indy. He's been great, but Dave, I feel like, would feel really good if he stayed under 20. If he was anywhere between 16 to 18, I feel like Dave's got to feel good about that from Deshaun Watson. Chad is going to ride Latavius Murray this week against Chicago. We'll see how that goes. Dalvin Cook against Detroit is a good matchup there. T.Y. Hilton, Hopkins, Golden Tate should be in there in that high-scoring game. This is going to be a really, really good matchup, and Dave's kicker got him off to a 0-point performance, and that could end up maybe being the difference maker. What's your look?
I like Chad's team just because he has a lot of players a lot of key players in that Houston-Indianapolis game, and I feel like that game's going to be a sneaky shootout to a degree, just because those teams are, two of the better offenses. I mean, obviously, you think of Jacoby Brissett, you don't think of, a high-flying offense. But in the past, you've seen T.Y. Hilton, who I think he's scored 9 TDs in the last however many games against Houston. So he's likely going to find the end zone. And if you find the end zone as a receiver just once, you're having yourself a pretty good week, even if you get yourself 20 yards. Same with Hopkins, obviously. He's going to have to get out of that slump of touchdownless games. And I feel like this week is the week he does it. I mean, that secondary in Indianapolis isn't the greatest. Obviously, they're not the bottom of the barrel, but there's going to be, he's going to have, options where, I guess, for Watson, you have Fuller, you have Kenny Stills, you have DeAndre. Those guys are going to be able to get out down the field, and Watson's going to be able to hit them. So that's pretty big. This game is pretty big in regards to that. And same with for Dave's end of things, the Chargers and Tennessee Titans game I think will be very low scoring just because both defenses are solid. I guess more so the Titans are, and that offense for Tennessee is just so bad that they're going to probably just run the ball the majority of the game, killing the most clock that they can. And you're playing against, you're playing with Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler, who we have no idea what Eckler's role is week to week, just because it varies from where you can get 12 touches to all of 3. So that's kind of a tough call for Dave. And I also feel like Mixon trade can make or break his team this week, just because a loss here kind of keeps him. A loss here and a win by Jay or Trey makes things interesting. I know, obviously, I'm in the mix too, but a loss here for Dave, where he was sitting pretty, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
a third loss here, kind of.
I think he's in a downward spiral. I mean, that he's going to try to give him a shot of life with that Mixon trade, but I said it a couple weeks ago when that Melvin Gordon news broke, and I was kind of looking at his team a little bit. He's gonna need some big games this week. He needs a win. Not in terms of We still got 7 weeks left, but he just needs a win to kind of give him a little bit of momentum moving forward, I feel. Uh, and I'll tell you what, I don't know about you, but looking at Chad's bench, I know a lot of people are riding Latavius Murray this week. I'm not saying they're not. But if you look at James White's player card, he is the epitome of a 9-10 point flex. And I would maybe trust that a little bit more than Latavius Murray going against the Chicago Bears. So we'll see there. And who knows, maybe that Bills defense against the Miami freaking Dolphins might end up being a difference there for Dave as well. So we'll see. This is gonna be a good one for sure. 3-3 versus 4-2. Next matchup is you against Tyler. Tyler is riding a 2-game win streak. And I'll be honest with you, Crimmy. You said at the beginning of the show you're not feeling too good. Tyler might be riding a 3-game win streak here soon. I mean, you got off to 5 points. Both your running backs are gone. You're going to need Josh Allen to absolutely tear up that Miami defense. You're going to need Cooper Kupp to be in that 50-45 ball game where he is part of that in a huge remarkful. You're going to need Jacksonville to absolutely destroy Cincinnati and Shark to kind of get on track here. Since of course, the week he started, he gets 4.8 last week. Isn't that how it works out? That's how fantasy works. You need some big weeks. And Tyler right now is sitting pretty. You're projected for 80. He's projected for 104, and he's looking like he's going to be riding a 3-game win streak.
Yeah, I mean, obviously on Thursday, I'm watching this game from I wasn't even watching it. I was on my phone checking the score constantly. And I'm watching like every play. I'm like, not on the field, and I'm watching these guys get nothing, and I don't even know what was going on. So I mean, even though like Damian Williams with his 1.6 looks awful, once Mahomes got taken out of that game, the defense was just able to tee off on Matt Moore. Obviously, he was able to get the ball to Tyreek Hill and score, but at the same time, like you're not gonna have to respect Matt Moore as much as you would on Mahomes, so that changes the game for a Damian Williams, who's strictly just a runner at that point. But that's not even the problem here. The problem here was Philip Lindsay with 36 rushing yards, and that was it. Obviously, the game got somewhat out of hand early for the Broncos, so they had to resort to passing the ball more. But wouldn't you think that early on you would want to run the ball to kind of keep Mahomes off the field? Like that was kind of my thing here. So obviously, I was playing Lindsay either way. I told myself I may not play Williams, and about at 8-10, I wasn't able to get him out. So I'm not writing myself off by any means, because obviously it's fantasy. You can sit there and have somebody score you 40 points like we've seen the last 2 weeks. So obviously there's a shot for anybody, but what I'm looking at here for Tyler is if I'm going to win, I need Zeke to get bottled up, which I don't know if he will. I need Edelman to essentially not play because he's questionable right now. If he goes into Monday and doesn't play, although I think he will just because the Patriots have no receivers if he doesn't play. And McLaurin. I can see McLaurin and I can see Allen Robinson kind of having lower end games just because the defenses are playing against. Like you're playing San Fran, who, yeah, you're going to throw the ball a lot probably, but San Fran's defense is not bad. If you're going to have Sherman, shadow him all game long, that's going to be tough to kind of get anything going. And with Robinson, it's probably the same thing with Lattimore. If you have Lattimore shadowing Robinson all game long,
sure.
Again, another tough assignment there. So I'm hoping that my guys obviously explode, but things aren't looking good so far.
Yeah, I mean, again, you won last week, which was a big win for you. Got you at 2-4. You're feeling pretty good. 108 points, and this week it's tough. I mean, and again, it's crazy to say, but you're by no means out of it if you lose. But you can't really afford many more of those because 7-6 might get in, but with you having absolutely no tiebreakers against really any division team, I don't think 7-6 for you gets in. I think you need 8-5. So if you lose this week, I think you almost got to ride the next 6 weeks out and win every game, which is going to be tough. Next matchup is going to be Dana versus Peter. Dana's already off to a good performance. Shocker. Man, 23 points, 12 from his kicker, 11 from Sutton, his flex, and Sutton's been fantastic this year. Just absolutely consistent for Dana to this point. He's going to roll the dice with Russell Wilson instead of Tom Brady against the Jets. he's going to not start Galladay, who would be starting on almost every other team. I mean, it's insane how good his team is. I'll just flat out ask you, does Peter stand a chance here?
Um, Probably not. Just because I look at his running backs and I know Kamar's out, so that kind of hinders him. So you're forced to play Kenyon Drake against Buffalo, which I don't know how well that's going to pan out. So to me, if that's your RB2, how much can you really expect from him? And it does suck because, you can't play Beckham because he's on a bye. You can't play Josh Gordon because he's out. He doesn't really have the running back depth there. Like, he literally has three running backs. One of them is out. Two of them are playing. And if you're forced to kind of play Kenyon Drake as your third running back, to me, that's a very tough matchup against Buffalo. I mean, if that team's in evaluation mode, then they're going to probably play Walton more so than Drake and Ballage at the same time. So you might have, it'll get you as probably.
I think he needs I think he needs a breakout from Drake. That game could remain lower scoring. I know Buffalo's been really good this year, but their offense hasn't been explosive. If Miami can somehow keep that game close, he needs like one of those big games from Drake. He needs like a 20+ point game from Drake, I feel like, this week. Is that going to happen? Probably not, but I think he needs that to win or something of the sort. He needs Montgomery to go off and actually put up a 20-point performance, or Sanu possibly in that super high scoring game. He's going to need someone to go off this week that we're not looking up at it. But it'll be tough. Any last thoughts on the game, though? You think you said you probably don't think he stands much of a shot?
Yeah, I don't think he's standing much of a shot. I mean, just because Dana's off to a great start with your kicker getting you 12, your flex receiver getting you essentially 12 as well. The only thing that could kind of derail Dana is the matchups with Aaron Jones and Mark Ingram. Those guys can kind of knock him off course a bit, but Peter's going to have some, just like me, monster performances to kind of keep himself in the game.
Right, no doubt about it. Next game up, and I mean, we're gonna have to look at Dana's team in a bit, but we'll talk about that. But next game up is going to be Jay versus Rob. 2-2-4 teams going at it. Completely different trajectories right now. Rob started off 2-0, has lost 4 in a row, two-time champion. Jay has started off 0-4. We talked about the breakdown and how bad his team started off and how awful it was and how he didn't look like he had a shot in hell anymore. And he's gotten a little bit of a spark the last couple of weeks. He's won 2 in a row. He's still, again, with the way the divisions are, right back in the thick of things in this playoff race. Not only that, he's again projected to win this week. That's pretty huge. While Rob has his entire bench on a bye, Evans bye, Winston bye, Connor bye, DJ Moore bye. He's still only projected to lose by 5, though. Based on matchups and everything you see, who do you like?
It's kind of tough to pick. Like, obviously, I need Jay to lose just because I don't want him jumping me in the standings. But looking at strictly matchups, it is tough to pick. But I do like what Rob has going on. I do like the Derrick Henry move there with the Chargers. I don't mind the Singletary against Miami because if Singletary is good and he can, take on, 12, 15 carries in a game like this, as long as they're up, he'll get those carries. So we've seen him have games where he'll get 12 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown, and that's a pretty solid game for your RB2. So you can't really go wrong there. And obviously without Evans, it's not the same, but he does have Fitzgerald against the Giants. He does have Jeffrey against Dallas, which Jeffrey seems to kind of be matchup proof for the most part, just because Carson Wentz and that Eagles passing attack is pretty solid. So that to me is probably what sticks out the most. Obviously for Rob, I don't really like the Melvin Gordon flex, just because again it's Tennessee. But if that's your flex and that's your starting running back is your flex, and look on the other side of things where I see Jay has to play. Well, he doesn't have to play Hyde. He does because that's who he traded for. But he's playing Hyde. He's playing David Johnson, and he's playing Stephon Diggs out of those three, spots there too. They're not bad. They have solid matchups. Like the Giants could give up David Johnson, a big game today. But just to me, the matchup wise, it seems to be in favor of Rob slightly because I do like what Jay has too. But I would probably rely on the running backs more so, and that's where Rob kind of strives there in this matchup.
Yeah, I think this one is going to be a fun one as well. I mean, I think this is going to come down to the LA Atlanta matchup. I think that's going to ride a lot of fantasy games this week. The over under for that game is 54, which is the most in the NFL this week. 54.5 is the over under for that game. So they're expecting one team to at least hit 30. And I think I would bet the over on that game. I think Jared Goff and Brandon Cooks is going to be the matchup to watch here. I think obviously David Johnson being questionable against the Giants is going to be something to be thinking about. And can Stephon Diggs get going? Can Hunter Henry put up another good performance? That'll be something to watch out for. And on the other end, can Melvin Gordon get going a little bit? Rob needs him. He's lost 4 in a row. Rob needs Melvin Gordon to be that guy he took in hopes that Melvin Gordon would come back. And that's not been the case as of yet. And going against Tennessee, that does not look like it's going to happen this week either, but we will see. So going to be interesting. I can't really look at either team and go, that's the one to go. Because even Devin Singletary, I mean, he hasn't played since week 2. Frank Gore's done all right there. Does he all of a sudden get the more touches? I don't necessarily think so. I mean, I know he's younger and they want him to do that, but it's not like the Bills are 1-5 and they're like, all right, let's throw the rookie in there. I really think Frank Gore's still going to be that guy, and Devin Singletary is going to be the change of pace guy. And maybe against Miami he breaks out this week, but again, it'll be interesting. We'll see. Next matchup is going to be the last one, Trey versus Torrey. I think this is a huge one as well. Again, I kind of said it early in the year. Trey got off to that really nice 2-0 start. I kind of said pump your brakes a little bit. We're going to see how this pans out. He's lost 4 in a row. Tori's kind of been winning some, losing some. She got to 2-2, lost 2 in a row, lost a really, really close one last week. They both had players go on Thursday. Mahomes only had 7. Hill had 15. And then LaShawn McCoy had 8.5, and Kelsey had 7.5. So this likely, if any team hits 100, they likely will win. 85 for Trey projected, 96 for Torrey. The Mahomes injury killed Trey because I think even if he put up 16 or 17, Trey would be looking a hell of a lot better. But I do think he's in a little bit of trouble this week because of the matchups Torrey has. I think Rodgers could really break free this week against Oakland. We'll see, though, because of all those injuries with receiver. And does Trey offset that with Scantling and Graham? The other thing to look at is Devontae Freeman again in that high-scoring matchup. John Brown against Miami. Lockett against not the greatest Baltimore secondary, believe it or not. This is going to be one that I'm going to be looking at a lot because they're both 2-4. They both are a game out of the playoffs, and they both could really use a win this week. What's your take?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's pretty balanced for both teams. I do like the offsetting Jimmy Graham and Valdez-Scantling move for Trey, just because if Rodgers does go off, he's passing the probably one of those guys, just because there's no Devontae Adams. I'm pretty sure Allison is questionable, so he could get offset Torrey on that, and it could push him over the edge just because you have 2 of those guys that are catching those balls from Rodgers, and there's only one Rodgers. So you're kind of doubling up at that point. I do like also Todd Gurley in that matchup against Atlanta. Obviously, we haven't seen the best of Gurley this year so far, but I do feel like this is a game where the Rams just have so much to kind of deal with, or the Falcons have so much to deal with on an offensive side of things with Gurley, Kupp, Woods, Cooks. Someone's going to get lost in that kind of matchup at any point. So it could be Gurley in the backfield. It could be a Kupp. It could be a Woods. It could be a Cooks. So all those guys have big upsides this week. And I do feel like Gurley can be your X factor there because of, he's been lackluster for the most part. Obviously, he hasn't been bad, but just not the same Gurley of old. So I kind of feel like we see flashes of that this week, which probably puts Trey over the edge. But at the same time, I'm not running anybody in because this game is going to be pretty close.
Yeah, and there's a very high chance Scantling doesn't play either. I mean, Scantling did not practice all week. Him and Geronimo Allison both could be out. And as weird as it sounds, that might be good for Torrey because if Scantling plays, he's the number 1. And Rodgers, they could offset each other a lot. And Trey's got Graham and Scantling. So in a weird way, Scantling being out might actually help Torrey a little bit. But again, remains to be seen. So that about does it for matchups for today. I got a couple questions here to ask you. We'll kind of discuss it. We've had the pull out a couple hours. Again, probably should have gotten it out last night so more people could have seen it. But regardless, right now, I did a poll for the best team in the playoffs outside of Dana and the worst team that's currently in the playoffs outside of Dana. Or not Dana, but the first poll was best team among current playoff teams not named Dana. Chad's got 3 votes. I got a vote. Kyle's got a vote. Why? You voted Chad. Obviously, tell me why he's the best team that's in the playoffs, not named Dana.
I just like his team overall. I mean, Chad's team, when you look at it, sorry, I'm kind of eating at the same time. When you look at Chad's team, I'm clicking the wrong stuff here. Just the Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, duo is going to pick up at any point. Like it just has to. There's no way that these two guys can't connect constantly and kind of do what they did last year. So I like those two things. And I like Dalvin Cook quite a bit because that team is committed to running the ball for the majority of the time. So he's going to get touches and he's going to be, good with those touches. I just don't see a spot on Chad's team where he's kind of weak. Like you could maybe say even like your flex, but like you have Golden Tate who's been pretty good since coming back. So Chad's team to me just doesn't have a weakness, and that's kind of why I like it the most.
Chad's team does not have a weakness, I would say. Again, I've said it week in and week out, and he's probably going to laugh when I say it again. Outside of his bench. And I voted for Kyle simply because of this. And again, I'm kind of going against what I've said in the past where you can't look at if injuries happen. But I don't know. Kyle might lose this week. I might beat him. He might go to 4-3, granted. But he still has a lot on his bench. If AJ Green comes back, Chris Godwin is... Again, you've got to talk about him right now. He's the number 1 receiver in fantasy. Look at that man's player card and just surprise yourself with the stuff he's doing. I mean, he's had 4 games over 120 yards this year. He is going absolutely off right now. Waller has been a fantastic tight end to this point, top 7. Really, I think a lot of it's got to come down to does Sony Michel get going? And if you look at his last 3 weeks, he's really turning the tide as well. So, Kerryon Johnson, Saquon Barkley's back. He's got a lot of unfavorable matchups this week. He might even lose this week. But I do like Kyle's team a lot moving forward. If you're just going straight up lineup versus lineup, yes, looking at it, yes, I do think you have to go Chad. But it's tough though. It is tough. I don't think it's like a for sure thing there. Like I said, I got a vote as well. Peter voted for me. I'm not going to really talk about my team too much. Just quickly, I feel like I have a decent duo in running backs and Bell and Jacobs and a decent duo in receivers. I went from having no star power to some star power, and I also think that Tevin Coleman-Breda thing could pan out really well for me in the end, but we'll see from there. Now, the other end of the spectrum, the worst team that's currently a playoff team right now, Dave himself got 3 votes, and Tyler got 1 vote where he voted for himself. So, Dave with the 3 votes, you were one that voted for him. Why is he the worst team right now that's currently in a playoff spot?
You know why Dave's the worst team right now currently in a playoff spot. We all know why Dave's the worst team currently in a playoff spot. Because he doesn't have the depth outside of these Charger boys. Like, if you're relying on this team we see as free falling in front of us week in and week out, how can you really trust that fantasy-wise? Like, it's not like they're playing poorly and they're putting up fantasy numbers. They're playing poorly and they're not really performing fantasy-wise either. So that to me, you can see Dave's team free falling, which is crazy. But like bench-wise too, his team this is a crapshoot. I mean, you have Rivers on the bench, which would be starting every week, so I'm not even really going to talk about that. You have Rex Burkhead, who has been questionable the last fucking 3 weeks. I had him. I held on to him. I figured he's going to get into the mix. He hasn't played in 3-4 weeks now. So I don't know how much value he really holds. Allen Lazard, if you're not going to play him this week, he really only has value for this week. I also feel like once next week rolls around, you'll have your Allison back. You'll have your Valdez Scantling back. You'll have Devontae likely back as well. So those guys like that doesn't really kind of hold value too long. You have Juju, obviously, who he valued very highly last, when he drafted him. But Juju even has been just piss poor, just based off of his, once Big Ben went down, these guys can't seem to get him the ball, man. Like it's just crazy. Like his best game is 15 points, and that was against San Fran.
Yeah, he's not had that breakout
Like he
game
just
yet.
hasn't had a bait. No, he just maybe next week kind of shows his worth against Miami. But if you go up against Miami and Juju gets you 15 again, like it's not bad. Don't get me wrong. 15 from your receiver is good, but like against that bad defense, you need more from your star receiver. Like that's your guy. You drafted him in this, second round, first round, just because of that. Like you expected him to be much better than he has, but it's not on him. It's more so on the quarterback play. And then so like it's just crazy.
Yeah, and he does. Here's the weird thing about it too: is his kicker did get him 0, and that could be the difference maker. I usually try to find a game of the week. I do think that Chad game is game of the week in terms of what it can mean for both teams. Dave could kind of reestablish himself as a good playoff team, and maybe with you losing, if Jay loses, if Trey, he could all of a sudden not only be a game up, if everything kind of holds par based on predictions. I know Jay's projected to win. Trey's projected to lose. He could actually all of a sudden go from being the worst team in the playoff hunt to having a 2-game lead on the next team. Could have. That's why it's a big game for Dave. It's a big game for Chad because he's fighting for that top of the division right now with Kyle, who's also in a game where Kyle could lose based on projections. So I think this is a huge, huge game of the week. And I would probably agree. I don't know. It's tough because I do think it's a toss-up between Tyler and Dave's team right now in terms of worst playoff team. But Tyler's won 2 in a row. He did that Zeke trade I liked. Starting McLaurin every week. We'll see if that works out. Number 14 receiver. I got to stop saying that because he has been pretty good this year. So once Breeze comes back, Tyler's team will be looking a lot better. And the more I look at Dave's team, I don't hate it, but you're going to need Ridley to step up, and you're going to need Mixon to step up. Ridley's been decent this year. I had him. I have a lot of faith in him. I think he will do pretty darn good. But Mixon, if he can turn into if Mixon goes into being a top 15 back again, Dave's going to be looking okay. And then Schuster back as well. So he's going to have a decision next week with Keenan and Ridley and Eckler. Who does Schuster take the spot of? That'll be interesting. So overall, fun week. It's going to be a big one. 6 2-4 teams in the league. Only 2 3-3 teams. There is 6 2-4 teams. Another cross-divisional week this week. Going to be a fun one. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah. I just hope that things work out for the ones that we needed to work out for. This is 1:00 games are going to be crucial, as the 4:00 games kind of don't have the fantasy appeal as sometimes they do. So, I mean, we can kind of see how things shape up here in about 4 hours, 5 hours.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And next week, if Dana wins again, we might have to look at the schedule to see if he's got a shot of going undefeated. We're going to have to maybe take a look at that. But with that being said, thanks for tuning in again, guys, to week 7 of the NFL Sideline Fantasy Radio Show. Good luck to all your teams except for teams playing me. Or honestly, at this point, you can root for every other team in your division. But have fun this week, guys, and we'll talk to you next week.